Hi, my name is Heather Mills, and I am a fifth grade teacher at Fraser Elementary. We're going to dive into student centered learning and instruction and what it looks like. My name is Heather Mills. This is also Candace Murley. We are both the fifth grade team here at Fraser Elementary. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact us at our email addresses. All right, so what is the rationale behind student centered learning? Well, in order to understand student centered learning, let's go back and talk about what traditional learning and instruction is. Traditional learning and instruction is what a lot of us older folks have experienced as students. And it was because schools were structured around the Industrial Revolution. Students were taught by an instructor, students were given a passive role in their education where they listened and they studied and then they progressed through the curriculum. Progression through the curriculum meant gaining mastery through quizzes and tests, and that's how demonstration of mastery would occur as well. Grade point averages indicated grade level readiness. So if you did not have an overall average of a C, then you did not progress to the next grade level. And then limited learning was limited in this case because it was limited to just what the teacher was teaching the students. So students didn't have very much agency in their own learning. And so what we want to do is flip that, and that's what we plan on doing this year here in fifth grade. And although this type of schooling still exists, we have discovered over time that students are not able to cope with modern and sometimes more complex problems that this day and age requires because it's based on a system that is no longer useful in this time, in this day and age. So let's look at what student-centered learning and instruction would be and why we're going that direction. Because we're now like in a technical age and everything is so much more tech savvy, students need to be able to evolve and be able to become good problem solvers in order to deal with the more complex problems that are happening in our time. And so, what happens in student centered learning and instruction is that we have basically kind of flipped that whole scenario where the student is going to be more in charge of their learning. So, classroom and instruction is designed with the learner's needs in mind. Students progress through the standards at their own pace. Mastery is assessed through a variety of methods, and methods will be chosen by the student most often. Um, but there is a certain criteria that must be met, so it's not like the kid can just pick and choose any old learning thing that they want. They do have to progress through the fifth grade standards, but they do have agency, and they will have agency as far as like how they can demonstrate mastery. Once mastery is achieved, students will move on to the next standard. So the pacing will be flexible, and in this case, learning is not limited, so it is unlimited because they're going to be able to use that standard and kind of view that standard through a lens of what they are interested in most. So if we move on to the practices that kind of encompass student learning or student-centered learning, we'll kind of look at a versus kind of template. So on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see student-centered. On the right-hand side, you'll see the traditional and how they are different. So if we look at key practice number one is the classroom setup. So in a student-centered classroom, you'll see desks or tables arranged in groupings oftentimes. You'll see flexible seating being utilized. So rather than just like a regular school type chair, there might be cushions, there might be stools, that kind of a thing. Student choice will be evident with the activities and assignments, whereas in a traditional classroom, desks are arranged in rows, there's little or no student collaboration, and students are often given worksheets and they work independently. Key practice number 2 is the student collaboration. In a student-centered classroom, there's a heavy emphasis on students working together in collaborative pairs or groupings of 4 to 6 or in pairings. And this is to encourage deeper engagement and deeper learning. And then whole group instruction is still utilized, but it is not necessarily the backbone of instruction. In a traditional setting, the students work independently. Whole class instruction is where they receive the instruction, and that's pretty much the only time they receive instruction, and they're given worksheets and work independently. Key practice number 3 is flexible pacing. In a student-centered classroom, the students progress through the mastery of standards that's appropriate for him or her throughout the course of the school year. So rather than having to demonstrate mastery at the end of a unit, it may take that student a little bit longer amount of time to progress. And for one student, whereas in another student, they may progress very quickly. So we kind of let that be a little bit flexible. However, in a traditional classroom, everybody moves at the same pace, and everybody has to be done with all the curriculum and all the standards at a certain unit or section of time within the year. And so it's not nearly as flexible, and it's not catered to the students' needs. For a flipped presentation, in a student-centered classroom, we're taking what we learned about NTI, and we're using that within our classroom and in the instructional framework. So there will be whole class instruction for sure every day, but there's also going to be some pre-recorded lessons that will be posted in the Google Classroom. And this is to help with students who maybe missed the day before, who missed a lesson. They can go back and watch it again, or maybe a student maybe needs some extra time digesting or processing some of the information and content that was presented in that lesson. So they will be able to pause, fast forward, rewind as to what they need to get out of that particular lesson. And so it's going to be a mixture of pre-recorded lessons and in-class instruction. And it's going to be helpful for students who need a little bit more flexibility. Whereas in a traditional class, if you don't get it and when the whole class gets it, then you basically don't get it at all. And so it kind of leaves some learners lost, and that is definitely not what we want, especially here in 5th grade. Our key practice 5 is going to be that we are focused on the standards mastery. So in a student-centered classroom, which will be in our classrooms, we will want to see the students progress through the 5th grade standards throughout the year. Rubrics will be used to measure the progress of mastery, but students will be given choices as to how they wish to demonstrate mastery in many cases. Now, there are going to be certain tests and standardized tests that we have to give that there won't be that kind of flexibility. So, like I said, it's going to be kind of a mixture of that, but we want to give them ample opportunity to progress through the standards in ways that are most meaningful to them. In a traditional class, of course, everybody progresses at the same time. Their grade averages are what's used to show demonstration of the mastery of the standards, and there's hardly any flexibility in how that is done. So we want to just kind of amp up the flexibility so that the students' needs are being met. And then a key practice number 6 is that we are really going to be focusing on real-world problem solving. So in a student-centered classroom, we want the students to become good problem solvers who are resilient, responsive, and reflective, who can look at a problem that they see and instead of panic and shut down, they're able to process through it in a healthy, maybe make it into manageable chunks so that they can kind of problem solve in their lives, in their workplaces in the future, and here at school. And in the traditional setting, students have basically become good test takers. I know that when I went to school, that's kind of what I ended up having to do, is become a good test taker. If I wasn't a good test taker, then I didn't do well in school. And so what we want to do is honor all modes of learning. So if you're a good test taker, that's great, but we also want you to be able to solve problems in the real world so that you are more prepared for middle school and therefore for life. So to wrap up, I wanted to go over just really quickly some of the components of student-centered learning and instruction, the global conditions. Remember, we transitioned from the Industrial Revolution, which was a system where the learners were passive, and now we're moving into the student-centered learning environment where the students will be an active participant. The purpose is that we provide safe and flexible spaces for students to learn, to try, to fail, to get up and succeed and try and fail again in their endeavors. And we'd like for them to be able to transfer that skill from the school classroom setting into real world. And the reason we want to provide student-centered learning and instruction is to better prepare students for a successful future. And in conclusion, these are the key practices. We'll have a flexible classroom setup. Student collaboration will be focused upon. Flexible pacing for each student. Flip presentations will be utilized. Standards mastery will be focused on rather than grade level or grade averages. And then we really want students to become real world problem solvers. And I wanted to end with this quote. When we empower learners to explore and learn how to make an impact on the world, we inspire problem solvers and innovators. This was a quote by Katie Martin, who is part of the Learning Centered Innovation, and it kind of encompasses what Ms. Murley and I hope and wish for your students for this year. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at any time.